Welcome to the Charlotte CBMC podcast, a series of candid conversations with area business and professional men. In this series, you'll hear how CBMC has connected businessmen to God, His Word, and each other, equipped them to grow and become godly leaders at work, in their community, and at home. Now, let's join our host for this episode of the Charlotte CBMC podcast.
Well, hello, Charlotte CBMCers, and welcome to another episode of the CBMC Charlotte podcast. I'm your host, Brian Bratti, executive business coach, and I'm here with Chuba Nwangwu. A little bit of information on Chuba. He was born and raised in Nigeria, so this ought to give us a different aspect and a different perspective on our interview tonight. I'm dying to hear him to explain all of that kind of stuff. He has an undergraduate degree in electronic engineering from Nigeria University, and he has a master's degree from the University of Wales in the UK in computer science. He's the pastor of Deeper Life Bible Church here in Concord, North Carolina. He's the owner of an IT company called Right Experience and the co-owner of with his wife, he's the co-owner with his wife, MJ, of a home health company called Greater Home Health Services in Kannapolis, North Carolina, where his wife is the director of nursing and Chuba is in charge of business affairs. He has 4 children. He's been married for 28 years. I don't know what it is about pastors and having 4 children. They got to have at least 4 kids. But he has 4 children, married 28 years. He's been with CBMC for the past decade or so, and I was actually responsible for the guy that brought him in. I met Chuba about 10 or 11 years ago at a Christian Chamber of Commerce event. I was making a presentation for CBMC Forums at the time I was running that program, and Chuba was one of my first people in that program. He is actually now in the C3, our Connect 3 team meetings. I meet with him and a bunch of guys every week. We've been friends for the past, what do you say, Chuba, 10 years at least, right?
Yeah.
And we've been going to these weekly meetings for the past 10 years. We've even gone on vacation together with wives. So I am really, really excited to bring Chuba to the show tonight. Now, his key scripture verse, as everyone knows, this is what I always ask people. What is the key scripture verse that you want to know, that you want to let our audience know about, that kind of represents you and what you're all about and what's really deep in your heart? And that is Psalm 90:12. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. So that's Psalm 90:12. So hello, Chuba, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, hey, well, tell me a little bit about growing up in Nigeria. I know this is going to be interesting for a lot of people here who did not grow up in Nigeria. And I say to people, one of the cool things about knowing someone from another culture is, as a Christian, while you have differences in how you grew up, you still got that bond of being a Christ follower. So a lot of times you have far more in common than you have different. So talk to us about, that scripture verse, your early days growing up in Africa, how you came to Christ, and maybe any challenges you encountered in Africa being a Christian.
Thank you, Brian. It's wonderful to be here again. It's an honor, actually. Just a little bit on that scripture verse, Psalm 90, verse 12. So, Lord, teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. It's a prayer. The prayer, and it also tells us our frailty in life. And I guess when we begin to understand that we have very finite time in this life, it actually affects the way we think, the things we do, our relationship with others. And that prayer is just something that is close to my heart, to understand my frailty and to also recognize that everything belongs to Him. So it's like I'm praying on a daily basis, Lord, so please teach me to number my days. Help me to understand that my days on this earth is finite, okay? One day I'm going to stand before you and give account of my stewardship, going to give account of how much and how little, and I hope how much I did for you. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. It's when you realize the frailty of this life and the finite nature of your time here, and then you wise up. You wise up to be able to apply, walk holily, walk righteously, walk with the consciousness and sensitivity that the Lord is. You're going to stand before Him on one day. All right. So, growing up in Nigeria, it's it's good to be an African, I would say, but I'm happy to be an American now. But I grew up in a very large family. Okay, I have so many brothers and sisters, and my parents didn't really have much. My parents were, they're not middle class; they are lower than middle class. My father was a trader, that travels from one state to the other to buy goods and then brings it to town to sell. My mother was a fish seller, majorly. That's one of the things she does. So we all ran on a very mega salary, salary or wages, but we grew up very, very African, so to say. We don't have running water, so we go to the stream to fetch water, whether to use for food, to drink, to wash clothes. That's what we did. We go to the farm. Every family kind of do have their farmland, and we go. I go with my mom especially, and my brothers and sisters. We till the ground, we grow our cassava, we grow our corn, we grow our other vegetables. We bring them home, and then we harvest them, and we use them for food, So that was a culture that I grew up, when I tell my kids these things, it's like I lived in a different world. We hand wash our clothes, we spread them on the lines, we wait for them to dry, we do all those kind of chores. That's how, and all these things kind of help to build us up and to make us people that are very, very responsible. I hate waste, and partly because of where I came from. I always remember my roots and how we started. So no matter the blessings and whatever God must have given us today, I always remember there's people like me when I grew up that are still there that will need one help or the other. So that's a little bit of the background that I grew up. My parents, later in their life, started going to church, all right? They were going to an Episcopalian church at the time, all right? And the choice, because my father, it wasn't really kind of born again Christianity, so to say, but they felt that leaving idol worshiping to join Christianity should be better, because I don't know, in the 60s, there was a civil war in Nigeria, okay? And one of the our elder in my family, when he was running away from our city, he was an idol worshiper. So he asked the idol to please guard my home and my family. So when he came back after the war lasted for about 3.5 years. When we all came back, I was very young then. I was almost like a baby. But when we came back, the elder Nwangwu saw that the home were destroyed. But the only two buildings that were standing was the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church. And then he said to himself, well, if my God, the idol, did not defend our house, but the house is of worship of the Christians. Their God defended their houses. So he said that I'm going to be a Christian. So now the choice was, should I become an Episcopalian, which is an Anglican church, or should I go and become a Catholic? Well, he went to the Catholic church priest, and the priest said, you're a polygamist. We won't allow you with 3 wives. You have to settle the other 2. You can only stay with 1 to become a member. He said, no, I'm not going to do that. So he went to the Anglican. The Anglican priest said, okay, well, God forgives and forgets. We can accept you. So him and all his wives became Christians.
So the idea of polygamy was what really decided whether or not your family was going to go to Catholicism or Anglicanism.
Absolutely. So that's how the entire family became an Anglican. Okay, so that's how we became an Anglican. So I grew up in that, and I was really very moral. I go to church regularly. I listen to what they teach. I grew up as an Anglican. That's all the only church I knew.
So when did you become a Christian? As far as you can remember?
But I thought I was a Christian at that time. I never knew any difference. I never knew there was another thing called being born again, giving your life to Christ. No, I was just, and I felt that my works, because I was told I'm a very good boy, I'm a very good child. So I just weighed and figured myself that even before God, when he weighs my goods and my goods are surely bigger than my bads, and I'm going to make heaven. And that has always been my mentality until one time. Then I was in middle school. All right, I was in middle school, and there was this teacher in the school that was different. I felt he was religious. I never knew what born again was. So I needed help one time on a spiritual matter. And I went to him and asked him, please, look at this. I needed help to buy candle to pray. Okay? Because one guy said, look, if you need to be delivered from this, you need to buy this number of candles and you need to do fast and pray. So I thought that was the way. But when I went to this guy, the guy said, no, you don't need anything. You need to come and give your life to Jesus Christ. He's the answer. So, and the guy spoke to me like I've never had such a sermon in my life. I've been going to church, but it's like my eyes was never open. How could I not have heard about salvation by grace through Jesus Christ and him alone? And he asked me to make a decision that night. I could remember vividly that evening. He asked me to decide for Jesus Christ. And I thought about it. It wasn't an easy decision for me at the time.
Well, a question. How old were you at the time?
I was about 17.
17. And why wasn't the decision easy for you? Because you had pretty much grown up in a church, so to speak.
Yes,
right?
Because I knew that this was in a boarding school, by the way. This was in a boarding school. I attended a boarding school. I knew that if I make that decision, my life will change. And it will be very apparent to the people. And and I will now be called born again. There's something they call them SU. There's a group, a Bible study group called Scripture Union. And everybody that goes there is tagged an SU. Oh, so you are now following those SUs? Is a kind of a demeaning,
kind of derogative term.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just thought about that. So I will now be called this. And I just thought about the consequences of making that decision.
Hey, and let me ask you about that. So what would the consequences be? Let's start with your family, because they were clearly Anglican. They weren't this SU group, right?
Absolutely. In fact, when I made the decision, gave my life to Jesus Christ, when I got back to the dormitory, obviously, some friends, I couldn't hide it. They got to know, because right now there are some of my friends that will say foul things that I will not respond, or I will just tell them I cannot do that. So they began to immediately see that there is a change. What has happened to you, Chuba? And from there, I started, are you telling us that you're now better than us? Are you now, so I started getting that kind of mockery and that kind of, and a lot of my friends shied away from me from then on. The other thing was that at home, my parents, okay, especially my dad, was very not happy with my decision, okay, because right now I decided to go to a church where I can hear an authentic and raw sermon that will keep my spirit alive. He didn't understand that, and he wanted me not to kind of insult the family's denomination. Okay, so he wanted me to go, because the Catholic and the Anglican are kind of it's not just that they are churches, but they are a social environment. So it's a social gathering. And now those other churches are much smaller, and their meeting places are not that decent. So when you go there, like shops, stores, like schools with raffia palms roofs, they are not as as organized, as rich and wealthy like these other ones.
So
they're
what
kind
you're
of
saying is
neutral.
the new church you're going to wasn't as wealthy as the Anglican church.
Correct.
Yeah, got
And
it.
it wasn't even as organized and very, as robust. And they don't have a lot of members too. Okay. So to my family, it was a downgrade. Okay.
So how did they treat you? I mean,
Yeah,
did they threaten you in anything because you were
absolutely.
leaving the
My
Anglican
dad
church?
gave me a choice. And actually a choice to either continue in that school, and he will withdraw my funding, my school funding. Okay. And they sent my mother to the boarding school where I was to give me this and to get a response. I could remember that evening I told Mom, I said, Mom, I love you. I love my dad. I want to continue this school. But if it means giving up Christ and going back the way things were, that's not going to be me. I will rather stay uneducated than to go through this. I'm fortunate because there are some that made the same decision with me. They were withdrawn. They never continued school. There were some that their parents had to influence, and they were beaten, severely beaten
Oh my goodness.
for those choices they made.
But
I was very protected by my mother, so
Right.
those didn't happen to me.
So you weren't beaten, and you were still allowed to continue school.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
So
there might be a reduction of some pocket money that
Right.
is given to me, and some of the other things.
Okay.
And then the other thing that happened on the family front, in most third world countries, there's nothing like this restriction you have here. Kids should not, even though as kids we don't drink alcohol, or we're not supposed to drink alcohol, but you can go and buy it for your parents, and nobody will restrict you on that. You can buy a cigarette for your parents, nobody will restrict you on that. So, but me now, being born again, you send me, hey, we got a visitor here, go buy him some wine and get. And I said, Dad, I don't handle alcohol anymore. So that was a big problem. All right, go buy him a cigarette. Oh, these are part of my don't do's as Christians.
So you weren't buying your parents alcohol or cigarettes or anything like that.
Yeah,
as a
any
result.
of those things that I was taught when I was growing up, that because when we were being discipled and being taught the way of Christ, we were also being taught what worldliness meant. whether they were right or wrong, but they were part of the discipling that we had. And I try as much as I can until I grew to maturity to obey some of those things. Obviously at the time I wasn't very, very matured in the scriptures. Okay, so I actually depended on a lot of the pastors, and they did a pretty good job too, and I'm grateful to God for that.
Okay, so we are coming close to time. So Chuba, can you hang on and we can pick up in our next episode? That'd be okay?
That'll be great.
To the listeners out there, you can get this podcast and other CBMC podcasts. All you do is go to the Google Play Store, the Apple App Store, or you can download the Queen City Leaders app. You can also find us on YouTube at CBMC Charlotte on YouTube. You can also go to our website, charlotte.cbmc.com, where you'll not only find this video and the series of videos we have, but you'll also find a lot of our tools, like our Operation Timothy tools, information about our young professionals, and also information about our Trusted Advisors programs. We have all of those things on our apps, and they're just waiting for you to check them out and explore them. Well, Charlotte CBMCers, that's all for this episode. Again, I'm your host, Coach Brian Bratti, and you've been listening to the Charlotte Christian Businessmen's Connection podcast. Until next time, God bless and Godspeed.
We hope you were blessed and encouraged by this episode. For more information about Charlotte CBMC, simply type in the browser address line charlotte.cbmc.com. That's charlotte.cbmc.com. There you'll discover the free resources to deepen your faith. Connect to one of the Area C3 groups that meet each week. Finally, you'll learn about Charlotte CBMC sponsored events like the Queen City Leaders Summit series. Please subscribe to this podcast so you'll know when new episodes are available. Like and share this podcast with other men and help us spread the good news of Jesus Christ throughout the Queen City. Join us again next time for a new episode of the Charlotte CBMC podcast. May you have a blessed and productive day working for the Lord. Thank you.